Alright guys, let's talk about that boy Killy because a lot of people don't seem to remember his name, but if you were around during 2017, he was one of those upcoming rappers in the Soundcloud genre that you couldn't ignore. I would describe him as somewhat of a mix between a clout and emo rapper, which makes him sound kind of generic, but when you actually listen to the music, you can tell it's very unique. He can sing, he can rap, there's a lot going on there, and at the time, a lot of people were getting on board and thinking that he was going to be the biggest artist to come out of Toronto. But for some reason, he never really made that transition into the mainstream. He's definitely very well known in the underground. He's very well known within his city, but he never ended up achieving that big time status like a lot of people thought he would. So why is that? There's not a million videos on Killy talking about his embarrassing fall off, so it doesn't seem like there was any one event that really destroyed his career. And is his career actually destroyed in the first place? Well, let's find out when we look into the story of Killy. Khalil Tatum was born August 19th, 1997 in Toronto, Canada in the Scarborough area, which depending who you ask, some people will tell you that's actually part of Toronto, some people say it's not. It seems like people who are from there are kind of like New Yorkers where they like to dictate what neighborhoods actually count as the inner city, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to say Scarborough is actually part of Toronto. It's definitely a poor neighborhood, but it's also very diverse with the people who live there, and fun fact, it's actually where Paul Bernardo's from, which if you don't know who that is, it's the infamous serial killer in Canada that was called the Ken and Barbie killer. Look into it, it's a pretty cool story, but let's get back to Killy. His father comes from Barbados descent and his mother is Filipino, and they ended up having Killy when they were only 19 years old. The family stayed in Toronto until Killy reached the age of 8, and then they moved to British Columbia to try to find some more job opportunities. Shout out Tio Laza and Mercules because they're both from British Columbia, so there's actually somewhat of a rap scene over there, but it's not as thriving as Toronto. To try to describe how big of a change this was for Killy growing up, I would describe it as moving from New York to Idaho. British Columbia is a nice place, but it's definitely not as diverse, there's not as much going on there, and Canada is pretty similar no matter where you go unless you're in Toronto, and then everything's completely different. It's a big melting pot. So he kind of stood out for his race, and on top of that, he ended up going to a French school, and he didn't speak the language whatsoever, so he ended up being even more segmented off from the rest of his classmates. But that doesn't mean he was a complete outcast throughout his entire middle school life, because he ended up playing soccer, which helped him meet more friends, and on top of that, he started writing down music and recording a little bit of it, which he describes himself as being complete ass. He always wanted to stand out, and he always wanted to be somebody, but he didn't realize that music was going to be the way that he would get there, and at the time, it was only a fun pastime that he would do in his free time. But things got bad again when he ended up getting rerouted a second time to move back to Toronto, so he had already gone from being the outcast kid in British Columbia, and now that he was back in Toronto, he was once again an outcast. His family ended up moving back in the dead of Canadian winter, so there wasn't really anything to do, there was nobody to hang out with or meet, so he ended up writing down a lot of music, recording a bunch of it. He never ended up releasing them because the weird thing about Killy is that he would sit down in 1 to 2 sessions and record like 40 songs at once and then release them over the span of the next year, which to me is a really odd strategy because then your fans are getting old music by the time it releases. Wouldn't you want to give your fans the newest stuff that you can? But at the same time, I guess if you sit on it, you can really think about if it's a good song and if it's worth releasing so people aren't getting all your throwaways. Let me know in the comments, is it a good strategy or not? At the age of 18, Killy ended up graduating high school and working as a door-to-door salesman, and then after that he ended up working at a grocery store. Every single one of these jobs were very soul-crushing for him, and he realized he didn't want to do this with the rest of his life, and if he was going to do something special, now was the time. So he locked himself in his home studio recording several songs that would soon become his biggest hits when they dropped in 2016, but he sat on them for the time being, trying to save up money at his job so he could pay for music videos, visuals, and everything he would need to really blow up as an artist. His first official release was a collaboration track with the artist known as Sega. It was called Big Bucks, and it didn't really do too well on SoundCloud, got a couple hundred plays, but after that he would start to pick up traction. After that we got the track Economics, Serotonin, Kennedy Road, followed by Stolen Identity, and finally his biggest hit to date, Kilimanjaro. At the time that the track came out, he was working at Nordstrom, and he ended up taking his final paycheck from there to pay for a professionally made music video, and just like that, he ended up blowing up almost overnight. It had somewhat of a slow start at first, taking about 6 months to get 1 million views, but once it cracked that, it ended up getting 3 million really quick, and now it sits at over 40 million views, which is definitely impressive considering this was before everybody started botting their entire careers. Soon after that, he dropped another music video called Distance, which ended up getting 1 million views overnight. He started to get played at Toronto clubs all over the city, and since he lives in Toronto, he was actually able to get into those clubs and perform live. He was doing shows all over the city, and then after that, he ended up going to LA to do a No Jumper interview. And it turns out that Adam was already really aware of him because every time he dropped a music video, everybody on his live stream would ask Adam to react to it, so he was getting a name in both LA and Canada. And it wasn't long before he started getting offers from labels. He actually ended up shopping around to every single big record company trying to see what they would offer him and what would be best for his career. Soon after that, he landed an interview on Montreality, which really helped his career out because a lot of people saw him as very humble and down to earth, not to mention the fact that he wasn't on drugs like a lot of other people from the SoundCloud wave. It's kind of crazy to think back then all it took for you to be likable was just not being a drug addict. You'll also start to notice that Blackie Speaks was a really big fan of Killy when he came out. He commented on almost all of his interviews as well as a lot of his songs, so that's kind of cool to see. But between the 2 interviews he did on No Jumper and Montreality, he ended up dropping another music video for the track No Romance, which surprisingly caused a little bit of controversy with the rapper known as Lil Xan, because Xan also dropped a music video for his track No Love, where both of the end screens for both of these music videos look very similar. I'm not sure if it was really stolen, could have been a coincidence, but either way, Killy was not happy and he ended up calling out Lil Xan on Twitter. At this point you can't really find the tweets, but apparently Killy called Lil Xan a waste you and called him out for stealing, and then after that Lil Xan would appear on the No Jumper podcast himself and call out Killy, calling him a bitch and saying that he was trying to put negative energy on him.
Pretty universal thing that you somehow kind of branded.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, like I can't say I created that, but I'm just saying
No,
I'm
but
really
it's
branding
kind of your
it.
thing now, you know?
Yeah.
You're
Also,
branded.
what's that rapper's name? Killy.
Kim, why?
Yeah, Killy a bit, kill you a bit.
Whoa, why?
Nah, calling me like a waste you. What is it? I don't even speak that language, bro.
What?
Yeah,
I didn't know that
bro.
happened.
Just because, okay, we directed a video called No Love, and at the end, the ending sequence looks over the title because it looks just like his No Romance. So he had to go on to Insta and like project negative energy, calling me like a waste.
What?
A waste of space,
That's crazy.
basically.
I didn't know that.
Like, bro, you didn't create that title, bro. That's been around for movies forever. So before you, like, you're
Well,
not
that's
that
wild.
popping, bro. Like, at least get to like, I'm done, Killy. Just don't. Killy.
Well, I mean, it's always kind of weird to go out there calling people out for
Like,
biting.
if I had a problem with someone, I wouldn't even like
A lot of
push
people
it.
be
You know what I
trying
mean?
to
My
throw it
manager
out.
told me just keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So like, why you gotta do that? Like,
Killy would then respond on an Instagram live stream where he told Lil Xan that he would be in Toronto soon and that he would see him when he got there.
What up? Fuck Lil Xan. Alright, tell him again, bro. Tell him again, bro. That's a full-blown waste you, bro. Lil Xanax a full-fledged bucket, bro. Fuck. They want me to be in a mix-up. I do not need any of this, bro. You guys know me. You guys know I make good music, bro. The man's are trying to beef me, call me a... Man from Toronto. Man Yo, this guy's calling me a bitch. He doesn't know he has a show in Toronto on the 25th? Come on now.
And surprisingly, that actually ended up happening because Lil Xan would go to a sushi shop, see Killy and his crew, and the two of them almost got into a fight, but security kept them apart. It turns out Killy actually has a pretty aggressive side to him, but I guess Lil Xan was talking pretty reckless on that No Jumper interview, but either way it didn't really hurt his reputation whatsoever. If anything, Lil Xan came out looking worse in the situation, but in the grand scheme of things it didn't really affect either one of their careers. Soon after that, Killy would drop his first official mixtape called Surrender Your Soul, which had the song No Sad No Bad, which went on to get a music video that got 16 million views over its entire lifetime. You can tell that Killy was really getting the formula down at this point. He would drop a song and then a music video, a song and then a music video, and every music video that he dropped ended up getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Soon after that, he would drop his next project called Kill Streak, which once again Blackie Speaks really seems to be a big fan of. Soon after that, he took a very short break from music, finally inking a deal with Epic Records, which seemed to be a pretty good deal. We don't really know the terms of it, but he seemed overall satisfied with it. Soon after that, he would immediately drop a project called Light Path 8, which did pretty well, gaining about 500,000 views on each song, before then dropping a song with Houdini, who was a pretty big Toronto rapper who unfortunately passed away in 2020, rest in peace, as well as Six Buzz, and I'm not really sure if there's a rapper named Six Buzz. I couldn't find him online. The only Six Buzz I know is the media company that shares a bunch of political stuff on Instagram, as well as being obsessed with Lil Tecca, so I'm not sure if they had a hand in making this song or if it's actually a different rapper that I can't find. After that, he kept dropping music videos, collabing with Toronto artists, and it seems like for the most part his LA buzz was starting to wear off at this point, which makes sense. He never ended up moving there. He probably could have, and he probably would have had a bigger career on the American side of things, but after all, Americans don't really stick with artists long term. They like you for a minute and then they start saying you fell off. And the Toronto scene is less packed overall. The entire Canadian scene is really not that packed, so staying there was probably a good move for him because he's able to get big time collaborations. His name is pretty known, they still play him in the club, and he's also pretty big in Europe as well. And that's really what happens to a lot of artists. They get big in America for a little bit of time, then they find a European audience that's a lot more loyal. They're able to do big time shows over there and the fans appreciate it a lot more. Meanwhile, the American scene will say they fell off, but they're doing bigger shows in Europe than your favorite artist is doing in America, so does it really matter what type of fan you have as long as you have fans? Those Euro dollars spend the same way as American ones, that's all I'm gonna say. He ended up dropping Killstreak 2 and Killstreak 2 Deluxe with the label, and then after that he became an independent artist once again. And he somehow managed to land a Scarlord feature, and if you just watched the video that I dropped on him, you know that Scarlord doesn't really work with anybody, so it goes to show that Killy being big in the European scene really worked out because Scarlord must have respected him from that, and they ended up doing a really good song together. I mean, I 100% take it over that Trippie Redd Zillakami song that I talked about last time, Dead Desert, Drop Dead, Drop Dead. Yeah, a lot better than that. And since Killy's been an independent artist, he's basically been dropping 1 to 2 new EPs almost every year. He's done collabs with Smiley, he's done collabs with a lot of Toronto artists, and it's only a matter of time before he gets a collab with the Six God himself. Well, maybe. I'm not sure if it will happen, but it would be cool. But one of the weirdest moments in Killy's career is when Tekashi 6ix9ine came back from prison and started talking about artists who would never make it to the mainstream, underground guys who would never be able to cross over, and for some reason he kept bringing up Killy over and over again.
Yo, listen, for your favorite rapper, right? You remember Killy?
Yeah.
Killy, give me underground rappers that still didn't take off. Killy, like underground.
Like I don't know them. I feel the hot niggas.
I love Killy at a certain point. Since I came
Killy from Toronto, right?
Yeah, Killy from Toronto.
Yeah, it's dope dude.
Yeah. You'll never see your favorite artist like that really go into mainstream because the labels are not putting money into them. Like, these people that you see consistently being beat into your head, they're beating them into your head.
The radio program.
Program. It's all about paying. All right. Keep this on the radio. Keep this. And this is a fact. Keep.
Hold on.
Here.
I don't really think it was meant to be a diss, but it was definitely a weird example because I feel like Killy's not one of those guys that just randomly fell off. He never got into antics. He never really tried to take the Lil Pump or Trippie Redd or Famous Dex route where he did a bunch of drugs and tried to get into fights. Sure, there was that one moment with Lil Xan, but that was pretty well an isolated incident. And I think most of us can admit that we'd rather be in the shoes of Killy than Tekashi 6ix9ine because after all, Tekashi was really big for a couple years, but he basically completely fell off. Most people don't like him anymore, and he's never going to be able to get collaborations. Meanwhile, Killy's staying low-key, living off his craft, making big moves and doing shows all over the world for fans who really appreciate him. I mean, after all, you don't have to be the biggest artist in the world to still be successful. I mean, I know everybody's all about clout and numbers nowadays, and everybody wants to be as big as they can, and I'm not saying you shouldn't strive to be that, but if you end up with a career where you can make full-time money making music and doing what you love, then, well, there's nothing wrong with that. Although I do have to say I kind of miss those old SoundCloud days where you could blow up off of one song, get that Lyrical Lemonade video, maybe fight Lil Xan in a sushi bar. I mean, they were fun days, but let's be honest, it was only a matter of time before that all fell apart with people doing drugs, getting egos, not working together, and eventually getting lazy. So shout out to Killy for being able to get his way out of that and still having a pretty successful career despite all of it. And before you guys all jump in the comments and say I'm dick riding a fallen off artist, sometimes I just happen to like an artist even if their numbers aren't the biggest ever. Not every video is going to be a negative teardown of a terrible person. Some will be positive like this, so if you stuck around to the end, I really appreciate that. You guys already know the drill. Shout out Knife Gang, leave some knife emojis in the comments below, and besides that, thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe if you want to. We're trying to get to 14K. But besides that, have a good day. Peace.